Welcome to the Au Jus. I'm your host, Beef Loaf. This show is being sponsored by our friends, Punky's Pizza and Pasta, located at 2600 South Wallace, my personal favorite eatery in the neighborhood. They have the best selection of pizzas and pasta, as well as the sandwiches and salads, any spot in Bridgeport. Currently, they have a terrific Monday nights only special. One medium cheese pizza for $12.99. No promo codes, no minimums. Just place the order after 3 p.m. and you get one medium cheese pizza for $12.99. Toppings can be added, but at their normal prices. Hit the website, punkyspizza.com, for all your carry-out or delivery orders, or to cater your next party. And you can call 312-842-2100. The Scarlotta family will take care of you. Punky's Pizza and Pasta. This show is also powered by you, loyal 108 supporter. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to tickle the undercarriage in the process. Like, comment, turn on notifications, and most definitely super chat, because that's how we get paid, and that's how we continue to make the content you know and love. Tonight's guest... He's a veritable OG of White Sox Twitter, a contributor for Sox on Tap, which is part of the On Tap Sports Network, and an old friend of the 108ers. NWI Steve, welcome back to the Au Jus, my friend.
Beefy, how you doing, my man? Good to talk to you as always.
I'm swell. You know, the weather has turned for us here. We're fully into baseball season. I'm like, the fund that I work on at work, the audit went out March 29th or whatever. So it's like a breath of fresh air other than a historically bad team that we're watching, Steve. That's the main hang up for me right now.
So I assume we're probably then just going to kind of talk about my WrestleMania 40 experience in Philly last week. Then that's why you called.
You know what? I would talk about that. I'm not as familiar with the guy. Although I did see Twitter was really fucking buzzing about it. So I assume it was a big deal. I'm not as well versed on that. I'm more well versed on shitty White Sox baseball, and that's really why I want to pick your brain. Particularly the White Sox pitching mechanism, which until before this weekend, I actually thought things were going pretty well. They had a rough weekend with Cincinnati coming into town. That team can be a juggernaut. You catch them when they're hot, that can be an issue. But really what I want to talk about is Brian Bannister in the pitching program here. And you're a big Bannister fan. You have the hashtag Bannister bot in your in your profile right now. So I want to get your thoughts on, we're 3 weeks in. Nothing seems to be going right for the White Sox, but there are some bright spots here and maybe some things to kind of take a look at and potentially some new opportunities for the White Sox to endeavor on. And when we get to those later, I promise you, we had this discussion lined up way before all the shit that started happening today was happening. But first off, I wanted to jump in with 2 feet with Garrett Crochet, Steve. I was surprised by Garrett Crochet's early performance. He'd been shot out of a fucking cannon, emerging as the team's ace. What do you make of his great start, and how is he making it work? How is he starting so hot?
Admittedly, I am very surprised myself. I was very skeptical of the move to the starting rotation. I've really kind of piled on him for maybe the last 12 months or so as Sox on Tap counterpart Besnick likes to, pull up some tweets every once in a while, be questioning this move to the starting rotation and its viability here. So listen, it's okay to be wrong sometimes here, at least initially. Right. The biggest thing for me, and kind of just looking at the numbers and everything, is the addition of the third pitch. There are very few Johan Santanas out there that can go out there and be dominant starting pitchers with 2 pitches only.
Right.
We lived that nightmare 20 years ago for a long time, and I still have fucking nightmares about that goddamn changeup that he's throwing.
You and me both.
But so there's just not a lot of guys that can do that. So Crochet really working in and adding that cutter to the mix this year. This is the third pitch that he had never thrown coming into this season. And he's throwing it at about a 16% clip right now, which I think is a good deviation from the forcing fastball slider combination that he's used so prolifically throughout his time in the bullpen. And now adding in that third pitch right there. And he's got about a 13 mile per hour velocity band in there. And I think that's a really good stretch right there between those 3 offerings right there with the movement profile that he's got on both of them there. I think it's a really nice compliment to what he's got, like I said, with that predominant fastball slider combination there. So that cutter, I think, is the big piece of this equation right now.
I'm glad you brought that up because it does bring back memories of us old White Sox fans when Don Cooper, R.I.P. in peace. Not that he's dead. He's just not coaching anymore. But he would try to teach everyone the cutter. And so it became kind of this running joke. And when I saw that he was featuring it kind of early on, he's been leaning on it a little bit more lately, I thought that was funny, but I kind of agree with you. Like, it seems to be a perfect complement to his repertoire. Do you think this is the type of thing that the White Sox will reach for more often when they have a guy with his profile, with the overpowering fastball, the big slider, to be that offset? You think it's because it feels like people either have feel for a changeup or they don't. And if they don't have feel for a changeup, you got to go with something else, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that based off of what we've seen really to this point, we've really seen him utilizing the inner third of the plate to right-handed hitters in particular. And that cutter is a pitch that really adds to that. He's been pounding the top part of the strike zone here, but even with the four-seamer and the slider, especially to right-handed hitters, attacking on the inner third of the plate, being more glove side dominant versus arm side dominant, which for a lefty can be a little bit surprising at times.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think one of the things that's impressed me so far is you're right. That is predominantly how he's working. But he hasn't been afraid to work all about the zone when the situation dictates it. Has it surprised you how much of a pitcher he looks like compared to what he looked like as a reliever?
Honestly, yes. That was, again, another concern that I had, because you look at, and you kind of contrast this with Michael Kopech, and I think that's a guy that we're going to talk about later on here. He's just going in there, pedal to the metal. I'm going to just throw fastballs right at you with little regard for where it's really going to go. I'm just going to try to get it in the strike zone, and I believe it's so overpowering that I can afford to miss my spot and miss my location, and I'll be okay with it. But Crochet really does seem to be focused and have a plan of attack when he goes out there. And that's something that has also really impressed me, is the fact that he's gone out there and he's pitched with intent. And anybody that listens to me on the Sox on Tap postgame shows here is probably fucking tired of hearing me talk about pitchers going out there and pitching with intent and with purpose, because that's what I used to get on Aaron Bummer for all the time. And I was one of the initial conductors of the Aaron Bummer hype train 2019 and 2020. But then he'd get that deer in the headlights look, and all of a sudden it's like he's going out there scared. Crochet's not doing that, and it's great.
Right. It is very fun to watch. Now, what do you think they're going to do with that? I was surprised that they let him ramp up as quick as they did. I am a fan of there is no such thing as a pitching prospect. Just fucking ramp it up and let's go. But what do you think they're going to do kind of moving forward, Steve, with regards to watching the entire workload for Crochet? Do you envision sneak him a day here or there, skip him here or there? Or do you think that they're kind of just going to let him go? They're just not going to let him throw 110 pitches. They're going to kind of going to keep the pitch count a little lower.
I wouldn't be at all surprised to see them kind of manipulate the rotation a little bit, utilize off days, maybe skip them a turn when they have an opportunity to do so. We saw that with Chris Sale at various points during his tenure in the rotation there. And I think especially that 2012 season when he made the transition from the bullpen himself to the starting rotation. There was that brief little foray back into the bullpen in Cleveland when he had that dust up with Kenny and everything.
Yes.
You got to love that. You got to love the fire and passion. So I think they probably will get creative with how they manipulate his innings and his turns through the rotation here as the season progresses.
It's interesting. It'll be interesting to watch to see how they do that. You mentioned him already, Michael Kopech. Michael Kopech is looking like vintage, baby. He like you said, he's throwing the fuck you fastball at the top of the zone. It's about 80% fastballs, but he looks great so far. I guess my question for you is, how can this continue? Can he keep being this guy every day?
I mean, why not? Look, some guys just don't work as starting pitchers, and you put them in that role in the back end of the bullpen here, where he can just say, I'm going to max out for 3 to 6 outs. I'm going to go right at guys. You see the fastball velocity is up about 2.5 ticks, right now. Same thing with the slider. And that's really going to add, I think, another element to his, potential success here, is that he's got a little extra juice on there, because he knows, look, it's just going to be a short burst. I'm going to come right at the guy with everything I've got, and let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been fun to watch. Honestly, as just a baseball fan, it's been fun to watch Michael just what do they call it? Pin your ears back and just go after some people. And he has been a little more fearless, in my opinion. I don't know if that's the move to the bullpen or he's just feeling better about his mechanics or whatever. But do you see that as well, Steve? He just doesn't seem like he's worried about anything anymore. And sometimes you would catch Michael Kopech in his starts trying to be a little too fine, trying to be a little too careful here or there.
I agree with that assessment 100% there, Mr. Beef. He's definitely been a guy that, when he was in the starting rotation, would be overly cerebral at times. And him and Giolito at certain points, they have that first sign of adversity, and then all of a sudden the wheels fall off a little bit. Maybe now being in this position here in the back end of the bullpen and attacking leverage, as Mr. Clean likes to say, because we all know it's all about attacking leverage. That maybe Kopech is just now got a different mindset and said, I can't overthink this. I just got to go out there and throw. And to this point, it's working. He's got to bring the walk rate down here. That's the only concern that we've got here at this point. If he does that, hey, there's going to be a lot of viability there.
I love it. Now we argued about this with the first guy, and I'm going to bring it up till later. Actually, we'll bring it up later on, but I'm going to tell you why you're right and I'm wrong. So I'll give you a compliment later on. But is Michael Kopech here in August? Steve, this keeps up. Is he here?
If he keeps up at this pace, I'm tempted to say no. We all know that relievers are extremely volatile and they are extremely sought after at the deadline. We're seeing the rash of pitching injuries that's going on across the league here. Relievers fall prey to this too. Look at what happened with Liam Hendricks a year ago. Sox thought that they had a guy in the back end of the bullpen, obviously has the cancer diagnosis in spring training, derails his whole season here. But somewhere along the way, there's going to be a contending team that has a pivotal injury to someone in the back end of their bullpen that they are going to need to address. And if Kopech can go out there and continue being this guy, pitching aggressively, getting a lot of swings and misses, I personally wouldn't be surprised if he's not wearing a White Sox uniform come August 1st.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at this board of who you got in tow, there's not a lot of attractive trade pieces, and so Michael Kopech would theoretically be one of them. We'll talk about Garrett Crochet and his status later. But I want to discuss something quickly, and the weekend fucking blew up my stats I was going to use here because the White Sox had started off before they faced the Cincinnati Reds Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The starting pitchers were extremely efficient, in my opinion. They were throwing they were a top 5 ground ball rate. Now, they're still up there. They're 7th starting pitchers, but not as good as they were. The walks were under control. Now they've fallen out of control. The ERA was about league average from the starters. Now it's fallen back from one real bad weekend. But my question for you is, with regards to what the emphasis is for the pitching program, I'm going to name you 3 guys. I'll go in order, and I'll let you opine on kind of what their importance is currently in what the operation is. And that first person, it's a mythical person, and it's been a little less effective as a few people have gotten injured. But that's the White Sox improved defense, Steve.
Well, that defense has definitely taken a step back here in the last couple of days. Braden Shoemake had a little bit of a rough go last week here. Look, it's going to happen. There was that stat that was kind of circulating around that through the first week of the season, they only had 1 error. Of course, it gets shown during the course of a game, and then the wheels just kind of fall off. I do think that the defense has been better overall. There haven't been as many instances of them having to give up 4 and 5 outs in an inning. Look, the errors are still going to happen from time to time, but I think by and large, the infield defense in particular is getting to more balls than we have seen them get to in recent years. If they can kind of just obviously keep some of those throwing errors and things under control right there, it's ultimately going to go a long way towards helping that starting or just the pitching staff as a whole.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that other than Shoemake, the infield defense has been solid. Nicky Lopez has really impressed me, to be honest, because just watching him eye to eye, I haven't looked up any defensive metric. It's kind of early to really dig into a lot of that shit, but he just looks good at second. He can't hit for shit, but he looks like he's getting to everything at second base. Where I'm seeing more struggles now is with Luis Robert out, you've got a bunch of people pressed in outfield corners. You knew Andrew Benintendi wasn't going to be very good, but Dominic Fletcher looked great in right field, and now he looks pressed in center. They've got Robbie Grossman in right. It just looks like you're a little bit falling down there, but it seemed like these pitchers were comfortable leaning on their defense a little more than I'd seen White Sox pitchers the last several years lean on it.
I would definitely agree with that assessment, and kind of circling back to Dominic Fletcher right there. Would you almost say that maybe this is kind of like 2016 when Austin Jackson went down and Adam Eaton got pressed back into playing center field?
Yep, that looks exactly the same.
We all saw what a disaster that was.
Exactly. It was like, get Adam back in right field. What the fuck? What's going on here? Yeah, no, it does bring back those sore memories. Next one up. And this one has been a controversial one out on Twitter, at least in the early part of the season, even though I think we knew what the warts were before this started, but I think people were sore and didn't really care for this guy. Martin Maldonado, Steve, what part does he play in this cog?
Okay. I think that there is one thing that maybe we can look at to say that Martin is bringing to the table, and that is just his ability to maybe work with some of these young pitchers and try to help them with things like sequencing, and in the middle of a game, in a pivotal moment, being able to go out there and talk to them and kind of help them recalibrate a little bit. I talked about this a lot, Crochet, during that Atlanta start when he had runners on second and third, 2 out in the 5th inning, and the number 9 hitter was coming up with Ronald Acuna Jr. on deck. And Maldonado goes out there and kind of helped him reset a little bit. And it was like, hey, this is the motherfucker you got to get. You don't want that guy on deck with the bases loaded right here.
That's right.
Get reset right now and get this jabroni out here right now and get back in the dugout. And he went out there and he did that. I think that's where Maldonado comes into play. I have honestly been very taken back by his receiving abilities here. I didn't think that they had deteriorated to the level that they have here this point through the first 2 weeks of the season. I mean, it looks just terrible out there.
It's rough. And every time they don't get a strike and you're like, fuck, is that really, could some of this be bad luck, or is this all just his poor framing? And yeah, he's having problems getting down and blocking balls. Like we were laughing one game where a ball went right through the 5-hole, and it's like, man, like, I know he's 37, but get your fucking ass down there and smother this thing. It's been a little harmful, because I agree with you, Steve. I like the thought process of have this very cerebral catcher there that can help them build out a game plan, help teach these, and even like having Corey Lee next to him. Good. He could teach him some of these things that he's been doing for years, and he gets raved upon by all these starters. But he just, like, his actual physical performance at the plate is just gone. There's no power left there. And then also the receiving has just been horrendous.
Yeah, it's really not a good combination there. And it's fascinating because, you see some Astros fans, over on the X machine kind of talking about how they miss Martin Maldonado, and it's just kind of leaving me asking why. I'm not sure what you're missing. I'm pretty sure Victor Caratini is giving you everything that Martin Maldonado could give you and more.
Right.
Also, I'd like to take this opportunity to say, fuck you, Kenneth, you turncoat Astros fan bitch.
That's well deserved. I appreciate that. All right, last up. Of the pitching program, Ethan Katz. He's been a forgotten man a little bit, because when you brought in Bannister, and Katz had some great successes on his own, and then he had some people questioning, like, what were you doing here? Like, a good example right now is the whole Reynaldo Lopez thing. Reynaldo seems to be flourishing as he's left and gone to Atlanta. Now, he was fine as a reliever here, but like, just there's a lot of wanting there. What are you seeing so far from Ethan Katz?
I'm not really sure what he's really bringing right now here. And this is something I would really like to get a lot of clarification from. And there hasn't been a lot of talk about this. Bannister and Katz had the relationship, in their time with the San Francisco Giants there. What kind of is the dissemination of information going from one to the other here? What are the tasks that Bannister is doing on a day-to-day basis that he's relaying to Ethan Katz to then take to the guys actually in the bullpen or in the dugout before the game here? I would love to kind of be privy to some of those conversations right there. I think a lot of times pitching coaches get too much flack. It's almost like the hitting coach, and a lot of times, I'm old enough to remember when I really wanted Greg Walker to get fired, and then it was Jeff Manto and Todd Steverson, and on and on and on we go here. So, the pitching coach really is, I think, in a lot of ways, kind of a thankless job here. I think that really it's the two of them working in concert with each other to devise a game plan right there. So I hesitate to give one more credit than the other. I know I am the Bannister bot. I don't talk as much about the Katz lab here.
Right, yeah, Katz lab. We forgot.
But the two of them really are working, or at least they should be working in sync with one another.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so those are some of the things that, in my estimation, have gone right, or things that we were interested in, like how they want to work together. Now, there's been some things that haven't gone so great thus far with the Bannister pitching program. The mix and match bullpen, the build the bullpen on the fly, has been a little sketchy. I mean, you've had we talked about Kopech. I mean, other success stories that we weren't planning to bring up, but like Jordan Leisure has looked good. I thought Tanner Banks has looked pretty good as well. But so far, it's been a little sketchy. They're walking the entire ballpark. Steve, do you think this is just the kind of thing that happens when you throw a bullpen together and you're trying to figure out who works and who doesn't out of the group? And do you expect there to be some turnover in this group as we go forward?
Oh, I think there's definitely going to be turnover, and I don't think that's something that's going to be limited just to the bullpen. If you look at some of the rotation pieces, we're going to get to one of them, I know, a little bit later on here, but even you look at guys like Mike Soroka, and the struggles that he has had to this point, you're taking flyers on some guys and trying to see, okay, what, if anything, is going to stick. Now, there's one guy that I looked at when you sent me over the outline here that I think could be potentially interesting here if he has maybe a change in his pitch mix. Davy Garcia. So the four-seamer is working pretty well. I mean, he's getting about 48% whiff rate on that right there. But the fascinating thing about it is that the curveball and the changeup are the ones that are inducing the weakest contact. So maybe as time goes on here, and again, could potentially just be talking about a really small sample size here, where maybe Bannister and Katz look at the data and say, hey, we need to kind of shift the way that you're attacking hitters, maybe start pitching backwards, utilizing the curveball and the changeup more to set guys up, and then maybe elevating that fastball at the top part of the strike zone there to get whiffs when you're heading counts. Some of the other guys like Dominic Leone and Tim Hill, bad.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of like my guy Brian Shaw, tattooed back and everything. He's already been launched, and okay, that's fine. I know he was here for us last year. We needed a guy to pitch every fucking day, but that happens with these bullpens. I'm wondering how long the leash is for Leone. I actually was wondering the same thing with Garcia as well. But you bring up a good point, and actually Garcia, his main problem is he's been walking the ballpark. Like he looked good this weekend. Like some of the bullpen pieces did look pretty good. But yeah, I mean, how much longer is Dominic Leone? What's his leash right here, Steve? Where do you see?
I mean, I would say probably as soon as they deem, whether it's Clevenger or Brad Keller or somebody ready to come up and take a roster spot, then maybe they shift Flexen into more of a mop-up role in the bullpen here, and then you see Dominic Leone be jettisoned, and maybe he goes off to Korea to enjoy his remaining baseball years.
And Tim Hill, you bring up. My thought on Tim Hill was we kind of knew what we were getting with Tim Hill. And then Pedro threw him in a couple spots where I'm like, oh, good. You brought him in against this lefty. They're going to pinch hit for this lefty. Some righty's going to fucking tee off on him. Now, and maybe that's the problem here, Steve, is like what he can do has such limited utility in a MLB where you got to face three batters and where teams are willing to say, look, you dominate lefties. We're just going to bring a right-handed hitter. Unless it's an absolute stud lefty, you're facing our right-handed bench bats here, and it's just maybe an untenable situation for him.
No, it 100% is. I mean, if you look at the sinker four-seam fastball combination, I mean, they are both just getting destroyed, and he's not being put in a position enough to be able to utilize a slider, which he's gotten okay results from here. Again, small sample size here, right. But when you're going up there and these right-handed hitters are getting a clean look at that sinker four-seam fastball combination, it's bad news.
Absolutely correct. I feel bad bringing it up because it's almost like this poor bastard's dead out of the rotation already. But Chris Flexen, starting pitcher, experiments off the rails already. Steve, do you see anything salvageable here? Has he become a long man? Like when reinforcements show up, or like is this going to be another one of these? Well, this guy's going to be out on his ass in May, and we're going to be looking for other guys to fill in.
I think he's likely out on his ass, but maybe, like I said, when Clevenger or Keller, kind of gets up here at some point, maybe he shifts into the bullpen for a little bit. The one interesting thing with him, again, his curveball, he's actually having pretty good success with that in the limited sample here. He's got a 199 expected weighted on base average, so he's giving up some really soft contact with that. So maybe, again, he's a guy where they shift the approach with him, having pitching backwards, becoming that curveball heavy guy. Bannister talked about that very heavily in the MVP machine, getting Rich Hill to kind of focus on that. Maybe with some of these guys, it's just kind of getting to learn them a little bit, understanding their strengths and weaknesses, because look, this isn't something that's going to change overnight. And I think a lot of people had this idea and this belief that I was perpetuating the narrative that Brian Bannister was going to come in and just boom, like that, everything was going to get better. Reality of the matter is that's not how these things work. They are going to take time, and there is going to have to be some churn and burn on some guys that just simply don't have it.
Right, exactly. This is an important piece to highlight here. When you're dealing at the very bottom of the marketplace, you're not gonna your success rate on a percentage basis of player it's not gonna be high. But if you can nail a couple of them really good, that's when you get a lot of value there. And so yeah, we know we're gonna have to go through some of these guys. And I'm glad you highlighted Flexen with the potential utility there. My only issue with him is as a roster fit, it's probably not that great because you do have Tanner Banks who can give you length. He has been good in relief so far. And you also have Jared Schuster who's come up and given you 5 1/3 innings. He's been good too. Like, so I'm looking down the barrel of, wow, they can give someone a start. I'm surprised they haven't really looked at Schuster, who has come up and has accepted a bullpen role, that he's not used to doing and done pretty well. So I wonder if, like, you're just going to run out of spots for people. Like, those guys are going to absorb that, and poor Chris Flexen's just going to be in the breadline. I don't know.
Yeah, and that probably is the case here. And like we were talking about here with some of the churning and burning on this, the fact of the matter is, look, everybody wants to make a good chicken salad, but you can't do that if some of your ingredients are chicken shit. Now, as someone like myself who's Ron Swanson and, salad is what my food eats, I don't worry about that. But that's just the reality we're dealing with here.
Absolutely. Baloney in the comments says, Chris Flexen broke my family spirit on Friday night. Yeah, it was not pretty. It was not pretty. That happens though. And I agree with you. Like, I even been looking at Mike Soroka's starts and there were a couple starts I thought, okay, he's on his level. And to me, he's just been kind of like a rough back end starter for every single one of his starts, basically, Steve. I mean, that's where I'm feeling Soroka. And I was a big Soroka guy. I liked him when he was in Atlanta before he got hurt 15 times.
Well, he's another guy, too, that I think maybe changing his utilization is going to be important with him. There aren't a lot of guys that can live and survive in the year of our Lord 2024 at the major league level with a fastball averaging 92.5 miles per hour. That pitch is just getting destroyed. I mean, he's got a 3.2% whiff rate on that. Now you contrast that, the slider right now is actually getting a 37.1% whiff rate here.
Damn.
So maybe they look at that and say, okay, you need to kind of go and you need to be that Rich Hill guy, slider heavy, and then you got to figure out another pitch to kind of go with it. But because that's really the only thing that he's getting any swing and miss on right now. Just the overall impression that I've gotten from him so far is the stuff is just so flat. And it's really disappointing because he was another guy like you. I was excited to kind of watch and see what there was.
Yeah, I agree with you. The stuff being flat, and he knows it too because he's trying to nibble too much, and this is leading to walks. And he knows he can't stay in the zone as much as he used to be able to when he was a younger man. It was a little more effective with those pitches. So yeah, it is sad to see. I hope that there is some turnabout there. I hope it gets a little bit more rope here because I was a Soroka fan. I want to dig into the future here a little bit, and I think we'll hit part of this a little harder because of things that have happened recently. But first, for you, Steve, what specific indicators are you looking forward to kind of heading into the dog days of the summer that are showing you that what Bannister's doing is being effective, is being heeded by our current pitching staff? What kind of stuff do you need to start to see?
So whether it's guys that are on the roster right now or some of the additions that I think we're going to get to and some of the potential ones we could see in the second half of the season, the biggest thing for me is going to be the walk rate. I wrote a piece about Bannister back in October, shortly after he got hired, and looked at his 3-year run that he had with the San Francisco Giants, where that team was actually second in all of baseball with the second lowest walk rate among their pitching staff. Now, again, not all of that is going to be on Brian Bannister, but that tells me that, when you have that long of a period of time there, and 4 seasons is a pretty long period of time when you think about it here, to not be issuing walks. So there's an emphasis on going out there, pounding the strike zone aggressively, getting ahead in counts, and not giving up free bases. That has killed this team for the last 3 years, and we're already seeing it these first 2 weeks of the season here. So if we start to see them control the strike zone better, that's going to be the leading indicator for me.
Yeah, and you're right, and they were doing it up until maybe a week ago. They had an extremely low walk rate out of their starting pitchers. The bullpen's been shakier, but the starters were doing well, and now that they regressed a little bit this past week, I mean, maybe they can get some of that form back. Crochet and some of the guys at the top of the rotation. But I agree with you. They have to live that way. There's too thin of a margin with what they got going to be putting people on base. They're not going to hit the ball of the ballpark on offense. It's a slippery slope, if you will. Now, we got news recently that Nick Nastrini is going to make the start tonight, and he'll make that start in about 10 minutes. The White Sox will be playing Kansas City here at home at U.S. Comiscular. And so I just want to get your thoughts on him, Steve. I I only know little bits of him because I don't dig in so deep into minor leagues anymore. My heart's been broken too many times. But I want to get a little like scouting report on Nastrini. What you think about him being promoted already, and will he stay here?
I think he's got to stay here at this point. I mean, this is one of the guys that matters to the 2024 White Sox and beyond. One of the things that has fascinated me these first 2 weeks is seeing all of the conjecture and people yelling, being hashtag mad online, and seemingly not understanding what they're watching here. There's not a lot of stuff that really matters with this group. Nastrini is one of those guys. I, like you, have not been paying a lot of attention to minor league ball at this point here, but just looking at his numbers here over the course of his career, the thing that jumps out to me is he's been a consistent 4.5 walks per 9 guy. Now, he counterbalances that by being a double-digit per 9 strikeout guy, which, look, if you're going to miss a lot of bats, you can pitch over walks. We've seen that a number of times. But again, if he can control those walks, because, you walk guys in AA and AAA, there's maybe 1 or 2 guys in those lineups that are eventually going to be playing at the major league level. You can't get away with doing that consistently when you've got that third deck. So, you got to go out there and you got to pitch ahead of guys consistently. So that's one thing I'm looking for from him.
Yeah, I agree with you. He is a guy that matters. What's interesting about what's going on right now with the White Sox is throw Luis Robert out of the equation for a second. A lot of the guys that matter, I would say someone like Dominic Fletcher matters and Corey Lee matters and Nastrini, they're not the top rung stars. And it is an interesting thing to see. Like, I would be thrilled if we came out of this year and it's like, these guys are probably gonna be regulars. They're not superstars, but they're like nice 2-win players you can plug into a roster here. Do you find it interesting that we're looking at it from that perspective as opposed to the last time this occurred, where we were just hoping for a superstar or 3 to hit?
You're spot on with that, and I was thinking about Nastrini today. When the news came out about his call up here, and let me pose this question to you. If he turned out to be Gavin Floyd, what are your thoughts on that?
I'd be fucking thrilled.
Exactly.
I'd be fucking thrilled.
So many people had this mindset and this belief, the last time around that, okay, we got Giolito, we got Kopech, we got Reynaldo Lopez, we got 3 potential aces right there. If you give me Gavin Floyd, a good, solid, dependable number 3 starter, he's going to have some blow-ups in there.
That's correct.
But he's also going to have some stretches out there where he's going to go and he's going to pitch the living shit out of the ball and put this team in a position to win a lot of baseball games. So if you can get that from a guy like Nastrini, that's going to be important right there. And then if a guy like a Jonathan Cannon can, I hate to throw this out there, but be like a Jose Quintana and have somebody come out of nowhere.
Right. Yeah.
That's really one of the important things, that if they can get one of these pitchers to make a jump like that, and I'm not saying be an all-star caliber level pitcher like Jose Quintana, but just give me a good, dependable mid-rotation starter. That's a win right there.
Absolutely agree. And I was discussing this with the 108ers, and we were like, we haven't been getting enough happy surprises. The White Sox used to be full with those. Excuse me. Carlos Quentin gets traded over here. Next thing you know, he's almost going for MVP. And then Jose Quintana is another good example of this guy kind of came out of nowhere. And even the older vintage, Jermaine Dye couldn't stay healthy. Then he came here. He's a stud. We haven't had enough of hey, let's have a little bit of good luck in some of these things popping. So I agree with you. Someone like a Jonathan Cannon popping up, who's allegedly starting tomorrow. We'll see. He's in the clubhouse. There's been no move made, but people are claiming that he is going to get the start tomorrow. Yeah, I'm enthused to see this. And Steve, this is why I'm going to tell you I'm a fucking idiot when I was saying that they're going to trade Garrett Crochet, because these early moves to me are showing me that Getz and the powers that be are like, let's fucking see what we got right now, because it's time to start moving on a lot of this stuff. And I'm appreciative of the aggressiveness. He's getting shit on in the public because they're 2-13, as well he should. This team stinks. But I do like the aggressive moves here. All right, let's start seeing what we got here. Let's start pushing this. I like that they're pressing Dominic Fletcher in center field, but at least they're getting his bat in the lineup every day against a right-handed pitcher. Just let's see some of this stuff. So I think really what they're doing is saying, hey, it's almost an open call here for anyone who has some promise, and you may get your shot. So let's see who can hang.
Exactly. And one of the important things that I've seen a lot of people talk about, and James Fox, somebody that you and I both interact with pretty regularly, he's been very adamant about the fact that he thinks that this team is going to be aggressive in spending this winter because they've only got $40 million in commitments.
Yep.
So that's a lot of payroll space right there. So you got to see what guys are going to be part of this mix. Throw them into the fire here. It's a season that ultimately doesn't matter from a wins and loss standpoint. It's not impacting the draft fucking position here, which we all know we have to be worried about that. So let's see. Some of these guys are going to take their lumps. Yeah. I wrote about this, and my thought was with Bannister and some of these pitchers that they traded for, or even guys like Nastrini that you bring up, it wouldn't surprise me if they were inconsistent or struggled going into August. And then maybe August comes around, they maybe turn a little bit of a corner at that point. And those last 2 months, we start to see progress heading into next year.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think where we've gotten to the point where we're like, everyone wants to wait 10 million years on hitters. And I think hitters hit the ground running pretty quick. You don't like a couple hundred plate appearances, and if they look like shit, they're probably bad. Pitchers, there's a little more of a gestation period. So getting them up here now, seeing what they have, letting them start working out some of this shit. To me, if you have eyes on, I want to let these guys battle for next year's rotation, having them up here right now is absolutely the right move, in my opinion.
Definitely. And look, as we all know, they are very fortunate to be in the AL Central. Chris Getz and everybody around this organization will tell you any chance that they get. So if you can figure out, hey, Nick Nastrini, this is a guy that we can pencil into our rotation. Hey, Jonathan Cannon, something clicked with him working with Ethan Katz and Brian Bannister. Maybe now we can pencil him in as our number 4, number 5 stars. Now we've got 2 viable stars. And this Garrett Crochet guy, he hasn't fallen apart the way some people thought he was going to. Now let's preface this a little bit here. Okay. We had a discussion in private about this here. And my conjecture to this was just simply seeing people after a couple start saying, think about the haul that they're going to get for Garrett Crochet if they trade him at the deadline. Yeah. We need to get out of this mindset. We don't know if Crochet is going to hold up. It's a small sample size. It's a 6-month season. He's never done it before. He's not been a consistent starting pitcher since he was a senior in high school. Okay. Yeah. We don't know if it's going to work, but this mindset and this idea of like, we got to start thinking about prospects that we can get back. It's got to stop somewhere. It has to.
Right. We have to actually see someone prove something on the field and say, you know what, they should be part of our team. How about they stay?
Like, I don't know, call me crazy. I think it would be really good to have a top of the rotation, left-handed starting pitcher that you could count on every 5 days. It really would be. I enjoyed it a lot when Chris Sale was here. I used to go to the ballpark every 5 days when he was on the fucking mound. I'd love to get back to that. Totally agree. Something for us to shoot for.
Steve, thanks for sharing your thoughts on Garrett Crochet, Michael Kopech, efficiency in the entire Brian Bannister pitching program. Remember, we ain't trying to be right on the show. We're just trying to understand. Do you have anything you want to plug before you go?
You're going to see some thoughts of mine on some of the pitching stuff here. I think Garrett Crochet in particular here coming up soon at ontapsportsnet.com. So feel free to give us a look over there. And, we'll be back with post-game shows and wrap-ups here throughout the course of the season. So you can listen to my idiocy when I get #mad online about stuff and, hey, maybe have some jokes at Ken's expense.
That's excellent. Great talking to you, my friend. Take care. We'll see you soon.
Pleasure as always, Beef.
Bye. All right, that was NWI Steve, my guy. I feel better about the White Sox after that discussion here. Next week's guest, I'm going to have on Eddie Barstool. I've been wanting to have Eddie on. We're going to talk about interviewing, which I think he's one of the best interviewers in the city, if not the best interviewer in the city. We're going to talk about building shows because he's built a couple very impressive shows. So really looking forward to having him on next week. Thanks again to Punky's Pizza and Pasta, all the 108 family up in the YouTube comments. Appreciate you smashing the like button. And we'll catch you on Thursday. Bye-bye, and I love all of you. Take care.